G'day, folks, and welcome to the Vookcast, Australia's Nintendo podcast. My name's Oliver Brandt, and with me this week are Angelo Valdivia,
Hey, paisanos.
Michael Goncalves,
Hey team.
and Luke Henderson.
Howdy.
We've got a great episode lined up for you, all about the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters, Nintendo Switch Online and its current offerings, and of course the Super Mario Bros. Movie. But first, let's talk about the Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom, because we've had a lot of new information come out about that in the time since we last recorded an episode. So we've had two big looks at the gameplay. One was like a 10-minute gameplay thing showing off like all of the new abilities and stuff, and then another one was a more focused kind of trailer that showed off a bunch of the story stuff, which I'm very excited about. I think the big one is probably how weapons work in Tears of the Kingdom compared to Breath of the Wild. So they've made a very, very big point of showing that weapons are still breakable, which is fine.
Is it though?
I mean, okay, so I have thoughts on this, but yeah. So basically, you can just like stick shit to other shit to make weapons now. So like, if you have a stick and you find a rock, you can stick them together, and now you've got a hammer. And I think, yeah, go on, Luke.
I was gonna say, and if you have a stick and you find another stick, you can make a longer stick.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see how far that goes.
How
on.
long sticks can get?
Yeah, can you just keep adding sticks to your stick to make a longer stick? I'm very curious to see if that's...
I mean, we'll give up after like 3 or 4 sticks, but you'll find some modder 2 years from now will have like a 19-meter long stick running across the field.
No. Wait, it'll be the
It'll be
entire
like
length
the entire...
of the map. Yeah. And they'll move it and the game will instantly crash.
They'll just be pole vaulting up to those higher floating islands.
But yeah, so for me, this kind of like, I don't know, it makes weapon durability less annoying, I think, because like when my weapon breaks, right, in Breath of the Wild, I basically have no choice but to fight another enemy to get another weapon, and that's like a really frustrating gameplay loop for me because like that just means I don't fight enemies in the first place. Now I can just like grab a stick and like stick an apple onto the end of it and get a weapon of some kind. Like that is, I don't know. It feels a lot more enjoyable. I mean, I would just still rather weapons don't break. Like that's ultimately the thing. Is
I think it's fine. Like obviously you can make weapons whatever you want now, but like for me, I also want cool weapons. Like, and for me, having a rock on the end of a stick is not a cool weapon. Like, I want to feel like a complete badass. So, I don't know. It is what it is. Like, we knew that they weren't going to change weapon breakability. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I saw a video this morning, and it's the first time I'd seen it in Breath of the Wild. Somebody brought a big boulder over to a Lionel, to like a golden Lionel, and then they put it next to it. The Lionel gets enraged. He stunned him by shooting him in the head with an arrow, and then he used magnesis on the boulder and just started bashing the Lionel with the boulder. And I was like, I'd never considered that. So even with all the durability stuff still in the game, people are going to find unique and crazy ways, especially with the customization of everything. So I do want to see if there's bananas in the game, because I want to see somebody throw bananas on like a boomerang, just because I think that would be hilarious to see a banana flying through the air.
Well, you'd tick off all of the what are they called again? The ninja people.
the Eager clan.
Yeah. Get them all mad.
But then yeah, we sort of took this pivot in the second trailer to more story-based stuff, and I think the story stuff is looking really interesting. That was my other big issue with Breath of the Wild, is that like all of the story, or all of the interesting story at least, was like told in optional flashbacks that you just couldn't play.
Yeah.
So like actually having like the story be like front and center in the actual game, that's a nice change, and something that I think was like sorely missing from Breath of the Wild. But yeah, I mean, watching the trailer, I've seen the trailer like 6 or 7 times now. There's just like so much interesting like lore stuff going on, and it looks like you'll be able to like fight alongside a bunch of, I guess they're sages now. But yeah, a bunch of a bunch of people like Sidon and not the Goron man because he's probably dead. But yeah, it seems interesting. There's a lot of stuff going for it. And I'm curious to know.
Has it been confirmed that we get dungeons back, or are we?
It hasn't been
fiddling
outright
about?
confirmed, unfortunately. But I mean, we've seen some things that kind of look like they could be dungeons, and it's just like, are they dungeons or are they just like things that are out in the world? I think the most likely thing is that we'll get stuff like the divine beasts, but just like more of them.
There was just another 4 divine beasts just laying around Hyrule that whole time.
Yeah, because I mean, like they were the closest we really got to a dungeon, but they still weren't great, you know.
Yeah.
But I think like the new abilities, like being able to like stick things together or like create vehicles or whatever. I think like those kinds of abilities are like stuff that could be used really well in a dungeon. Even
Well,
like
I wonder how they're going to. I wonder how they're going to treat the shrines, because there were like 140 of them or something in the original.
Yeah.
And they all required different. Well, not all of them. But some of them required some different ways of using the Switch hardware itself. So I wonder if they'll sort of incorporate these new mechanics in some of the Switch, motion stuff as well, or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just
Maybe.
how they treat that, seeing as the game is much bigger this time around, assumedly.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah,
mean that's the other thing.
The other thing that you need to consider too is that the first game was originally built for the Wii U. So this is the first game built exclusively for the Switch. So I wonder if things have been scaled up or scaled down to now make, or to make the full use of the actual hardware rather than just bringing the game from the Wii U.
Are you saying that we're going to have more mini games where we hold the IR sensor up to our teeth and Link has to like chomp his way through some apples or something?
That's
That's
exactly what I'm
actually
saying.
how you eat food now. That's the only way to eat food. You have to-
I believe it.
You have to actually hold the controller up to a flame to cook.
Yeah.
but yeah,
HD Rumble.
I'm interested to know what people are sort of feeling about Tears of the Kingdom, and if they'll be playing it sort of on day one, or they'll just wait to play it. Because I don't know, I'm a bit torn on it. I wasn't like super big on Breath of the Wild, and this is a lot more of that kind of stuff. But then there's new stuff that kind of seems interesting. I don't know.
I mean, I probably won't be playing on day one because I have to finish the first game. So
Well, I'll definitely be getting it on day one, but I personally probably won't be playing it because my girlfriend will probably be playing it for like 2 months before me. So, and plus it's me. I'll get to it in like 5 years. So
Yeah. So when we're recording like episode 700 of the Vookcast, you'll give us your thoughts on it.
I'll be like, oh, dude, have you guys played Tears of the Kingdom?
Yeah, come on,
I'll be getting it day one, and I'll be playing it day one. That's me.
See, I'll probably play it just because like it seems like an easy thing to do for work. Because I work in games journalism, so it's always good to have something to write about. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I just I'm kind of in that place where like I wish that they would like start doing new 2D games again, because like I feel like with this big push for like Tears of the Kingdom and stuff, like everybody's excited about that, but like we haven't had like a new original like top-down Zelda game since like A Link Between Worlds, and that's kind of a bummer if we just like don't get those anymore. But-
Well,
I mean, if they didn't make Advance Wars 2D, I don't know if they're going to make Zelda 2D. So
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Alright, anyway, that comes out in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Just
2
after
weeks.
the next episode,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be a while before we talk about that, but we'll see how it goes. Moving on to our next topic. I just wrote in the form like Pulse Man is on Mega Drive, Nintendo Switch Online now, because it was generally exciting to me. So Pulse Man is one of Game Freak's games. Ended up like being like referenced by a lot of Pokemon stuff eventually. But it's quite a fun game. It's kind of Mega Man-ish, and now on the Nintendo Switch Online. So we also got Kid Chameleon, Flicky, Street Fighter 2, because apparently there's like 16 different versions of Street Fighter 2 available on the Switch right now, which is
Well,
Just
half of those are in that
stupid.
Street Fighter collection, so
well, yeah.
that makes that easy. But yeah,
Well,
but even
and
still,
that's-
even without that, there's so many.
That's
Street
only
Fighters.
that's the only half the amount of Street Fighter 2s that are available. But
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to have a sort of a brief discussion about how we feel about Nintendo Switch Online at the moment, because they've added a few things. Like there was a Game Boy update that didn't really add anything huge, but I mean the games they've added were nice. We got like Pokemon Stadium like a couple weeks ago, and then Mega Drive seems to be the most consistent. Just like every 2 months we get Mega Drive games, which is weird that any of the Nintendo systems aren't consistent.
So just going back to Pokemon Stadium, that was such a weird addition. Even when that got announced, such a weird addition, because literally half the fun of playing that game is being able to stick in your red or blue Game Boy cartridge into the N64 controller. The fact that you can't do that in the Switch version is like, what is even the point?
Well, yeah, especially because like when you do like some of the like gym leader castle stuff, like it is borderline impossible to actually like win some of the later challenges with the rental Pokemon that they give you. Like it just is almost impossible. Like I've seen one person do it ever. So yeah, it's a really weird choice.
In all their promo art for it coming, they still had the N64 transfer pack on the box art, like included. Yeah. It's like, no, it's not.
It's so weird. The N64 controller that you can get for the Switch, that doesn't have the little expansion slot in the controllers.
No.
That's where the battery lives. But yeah, so yeah, how do we generally feel about how Nintendo Switch Online is going? Because I'm kind of disappointed that it's still just like the same stuff. Like there's no value add there, right? Like at the moment, there's just
it's so hard for me to care. Are we talking about Nintendo Switch Online as a whole, or like the game service?
The game service, yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's so hard for me to care about it. Like I care about it in the sense that I want it to be good, and Nintendo's frustrating and making bad choices like continuously. But for me, I have way better ways of playing all those games on that service. I will literally never play a game on there just because it's, for me personally, it's the worst option for me to choose.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's the thing, right? Is that, like, I mean, it's obviously not really aimed at people like you, Michael.
Oh, not at all. Not 100%.
But I mean, like, you know, the Nintendo 64 like emulation is like better now than it was at launch.
For me specifically with N64, I don't like the way it looks. I don't like that the 3D is upscaled, but like all the like HUD elements are now filtered, and it looks really odd. It doesn't look like an N64 game like at all. It's really strange.
Yeah. And I think like part of that is because like they're essentially using the emulator and like the graphical options and stuff that they made for Super Mario 3D All Stars, where they had replaced all of like the HUD elements for Mario 64 and like made it actually look nice. But then when you're just like dropping other games into that system and not doing any extra work with them, they end up looking like real funky.
Yeah. Especially when like the 3D is meant to be like 240p. Like it is so much higher resolution than it should be. It looks odd.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's the thing, right? Is that like it's like rendering all of the games at native resolution, depending on like whether you're on handheld or docked. So, like it's rendering these 3D scenes as like 1080p or 720p, and that like it's just really really weird when you've got like super high resolution. Well, maybe not high resolution, but like super high quality like N64 models, and then like impossible to read HUD element because it's like a fraction of the resolution. Yeah, and like I don't know. I guess like it might be a bit much for them to expect that they'll like redo art for like every single one of the games, but like there are some games that desperately need like a little more work done to them.
I just rather they have a pixel perfect mode. Just render the game how it's meant to look. Just like the other 2D games have a pixel perfect mode. Just why not?
Yeah.
The Game Boy Advance has one, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Because I remember putting that on, and it took the image from the full screen to like this tiny little like postage stamp size thing, and I was like, no, the GBA wasn't that small, but yeah, actual pixel perfect, it was that small, the image. So
I do like on the Game Boy one, they've got like a look and feel option that like adds the grid lines, and then also like emulates the ghosting of the screen. Because there
That's
were
really
actually
cool.
a few games that like kind of relied on that ghosting effect for specific visual effects. So, I mean that's really cool, and like you can tell that they just put a ton of effort into the like Game Boy and Game Boy Advance emulators. And then like you look at the N64 one and you still can't even like remap buttons. And like some games are just like very much not built for the control scheme that they have as default there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing, and like they've just like they've not really made any effort to pick interesting games for like the first few drops for like Game Boy either. Because like I feel like it would be a slam dunk to just like chuck the interesting GBA versions of like all of the Mario games on there, because you know they had like the e-reader levels and like extra content and stuff that was really cool. But we just don't get those.
No.
And then, you know, we know that Golden Sun is on the way, but like, why wasn't that just sort of there at launch as well? I feel like a lot of people would have been like a lot more excited to sign up for Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack if like Golden Sun was just there, or you know, interesting games beyond like the 6 that it came with.
I think they'd get a lot more people excited for it if they actually said, "Hey, these games are coming, and you know, Golden Sun will launch in May." You know,
Yeah.
Kirby 17 will launch in June. Like if they actually started putting, you know, timeframes on them, rather than just saying, "Hey, these 6 games are coming at some point in the future." It's like that doesn't get me excited, because yeah, great. Like these 4 Mega Drive games that dropped, I have no excitement for any of them because I didn't grow up with a Mega Drive. And I can jump in and play them. Like, yeah, cool, that's fun. I had 5 minutes worth of fun for each game and move on. But if you're a Mega Drive fan and you get told this week, hey, in, you know, June when the next drop happens, we're adding these 4 games, you build a bit of excitement. Nintendo do that with their own stuff. You know, with the 64,
But
they do it a week out. They'll say, hey, we're going to launch this game. But all the others, they just drop them and that's the end of it.
How could you not get
Yes.
excited for Kid Chameleon though? Look at that cover. It's the most 90s thing that has ever existed. If you needed to ever like time frame that game, it's so easy.
So this is what I think. This is why I enjoy being the outlier in the group, because I grew up with a Mega Drive. So seeing every time, in the rare blue moon when there is a Mega Drive drop or whatever, like I'm always really excited. Like Flicky, like looking through this trailer, like Flicky I'd never heard of before, but watching it looks so much like Ghost House from the Sega Master System, which is just so weird to me because that's such a like intense sort of horror arcade game. Kid Chameleon looks awesome. Like I've never actually played it before, but I'd always heard good things about it. And I love Street Fighter, so I'm keen to give Street Fighter a shot. But Pulseman doesn't really do anything for me personally. But like I'm keen to jump into these and give them a crack.
Yeah, I mean, like I also had a Mega Drive growing up, but I was one of the lucky people to have a Mega Drive and a Super Nintendo. So my time was
you had
kind
a
of
Super
split.
Nintendo and a Dust Collector.
No, I had Sonic Spinball. That was great.
Now, see, like again, like I had friends who had Super Nintendos, but like whenever I'd have friends over, or I go to friends' places and stuff like that, like we were all interested in playing Mega Drive because the like feeding right into the narrative, the console wars narrative of the '90s, like Sega or Mega Drive was the cooler console. That's where the cooler games were. Sound
Uncensored
was so
Mortal
much better.
Kombat.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you had all your action games, you had all like explosions. Things are running at like a way higher frame rate than they were on the Super Nintendo as well.
Blast processing.
Absolutely.
and the immortal phrase, Sega do what Nintendo don't.
Yeah. Although we didn't really have, that wasn't much of an ad campaign here, right? Like I don't
No, it
remember that
wasn't.
as a kid.
No, you see, because that's the thing, right? Is that like Sega was like kind of inherently popular in PAL regions because Sega actually like put the effort in to appeal to PAL regions like quite early on. We were actually talking about this in the Discord the other day. One of the things that like sort of got PAL Sega a foothold in PAL regions was like its sort of early systems, the SE 3000, which was its sort of Commodore 64 competitor that also played games, was like only really launched in like Japan, Australia, and like a couple European regions. But it was like the lowest cost like personal computer that released at the time, and it's sort of like I don't know. it was just one of those things that like earned Sega a lot of goodwill early on, and then when the Master System and Mega Drive came out, they became like smash hits in Power Regions because people had already like got positive associations with the brand.
But also, like in terms of marketing, like you had Nintendo of America, and then Nintendo of Japan, and then maybe Europe. I can't even remember. But like, Sega of America, whatever they called themselves. Like they had the hardcore ad campaigns and things like that. They didn't really come out outside the US anyway, so we didn't really have that whole like blast processing Sega does with Nintendo don't kind of attitude in terms of marketing here, from what I can remember. But like a lot of people who were playing sports games and things, they typically played them on Sega consoles, because there was way more of them happening at the time. Like there was still like your Madden and your soccer games and things like that. Like what was it, International Soccer or something like that on Super Nintendo. But there was way more stuff coming out of EA on the Mega Drive than there was on the Super Nintendo.
I think a lot of that stems from Nintendo's, closed fist about, quality and all that stuff that they brought in on the NES originally. They just didn't want to let go, which ended up biting them in the butt. But I think that sort of carried over, and Sega were more receptive to new ideas and different things, which helped them out.
I just think that those sports game manufacturers and some of the other like European manufacturers are way closer with Sega than they were with Nintendo at the time.
It's true.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. Nintendo Switch Online is weird. Like, I don't pay for it personally. So,
yeah,
like,
look,
I'm in a family group that somebody else pays for.
See, I'm in a family group as well, and we split it, so it's only like what, $13 a year or something. But I do look at this. I look at this drip feed. I'm just like, I think this is it. I think this is the last year that I really put up with this anymore. I think what I'm going to do is once it comes to resubscribe, I'm just going to pull out and I'll buy the Mario Kart DLC, and then that's it. Like, I don't play Switch games online because the connections are obviously often garbage. Trying to play Smash Brothers a lot of the time is just a nightmare, so there's no point. And I'm sick of waiting for a drip feed of old games that are already 30 years old. Like I've talking on the before recording that I'm looking to get a Steam Deck and stuff anyway. So I'm just gonna load that up with my huge library of old games and things and just play them on there. And then I have them. I don't have to wait 2 years to play a game that I want anymore. There's no point. There's no point in waiting so long for old games. We're
I will say, like,
that.
the one benefit that like Nintendo Switch Online does have with its game selections is that like it's getting me learning about a lot of games and playing a lot of games that I wouldn't normally be able to do that. Like for discoverability of retro games, it's quite nice. There's a lot of Super Nintendo games that I had never heard of and would never have heard of if it hadn't come to Nintendo Switch Online. So like that's a great plus for me. But like otherwise, like I don't know. I'm not really like waiting to play any games on it, Like it would be nice if I could play Oracle of Ages, but I don't really give a shit.
Well, but like every week we talk about Golden Sun, supposedly coming, and that's definitely a game that people are waiting for. So it's like that game came out 20 years ago on the GBA. Like most of us have already played it, and we're just waiting for Nintendo to finally give that to us again. I guarantee that game's not going to come until like the last month before, like the month before whatever the anniversary is for.
Yeah, it'll come in August because September is the anniversary of expansion. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think for people coming in now, if they're just getting a Switch this year and they're thinking Nintendo Switch Online's good value, it is. If you're paying your $80 and you're getting access to a few hundred games, it's definitely good value in that respect. But if you're like us and you've been there since day one, the value hasn't. There's no reward on the investment, to put it that way.
Yeah, and they seem to have just like stopped adding like DLC to expansion pass as well. So like, the Splatoon 3 DLC has already like started being distributed, but they didn't put that on the thing, right? And the Xenoblade DLC, the last wave of that comes out next week, and they could add that to the service and get a lot of goodwill, but they don't give a shit because
if they just add all the Nintendo DLC to the expansion pass, I reckon that will get so many people jump on board.
Yeah, because like it's a good idea, right? To like have it as like a Game Pass of DLC. I read about this like when they first started adding DLC to it, and it's like if they do that, it's a really good idea because people like overwhelmingly don't really buy a DLC, but like the engagement is much higher if they don't have to pay for it. well, not directly pay for it. But yeah, it's in a weird spot because they just stopped doing that. Because I'm guessing they just like weren't getting enough people subscribing, or like the people that were subscribing like were totally content with like just the Mario Kart DLC. So why add more?
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just how it is. Speaking of retro games, though, fantastic segue into our next segment. The Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters finally out on the Switch. Don't know why they decided to make it mobile and PC exclusive for a year. Seems like a weird choice, but it's full remakes of Final Fantasy 1 to 6.
But also a limitation on physical copies as well.
Yeah, so there's like 2 regions that have physical copies, and there are very few like prints of those physical copies as well.
Scalpers are having a great time with that.
I'm
sure
so
are.
sick of that stuff, man. Like, it's just so irritating. Like, all the copies just immediately got snapped up and are immediately on eBay and other sites for like $400-500 US. It's a joke.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, so it is, full remakes of 1 to 6, which means that except for Final Fantasy 11, which is an MMO, every game from 1 through to 12 is on the Switch, and we've also got 15 because we have 15 Pocket Edition.
Have you ever actually played Pocket Edition like from start to finish?
Yeah, I played it when it released. It's a really, really good adaptation of Final Fantasy 15. I think it is probably better than Final Fantasy 15 is, and I love Final Fantasy 15. But I mean, it just like it cuts out all of the like frustrating, like terrible nonsense that Final Fantasy 15 has, and just like streamlines it to make it interesting.
I mean, you could take out the 15 from that statement, and that would fix up a lot of the Final Fantasy games.
It sure would,
which is kind of what Pixel Remaster does on consoles, because you can do XP boost. You can get like 4 times XP in battles if you want, or 2 times XP. You can turn off random encounters, if you don't care about those. Unfortunately, they made it clear in like the review guide that turning those off won't help you, because they don't like lower the difficulty level of the bosses. So if you turn off random encounters and then get ahead to a boss and you've not leveled up at all, the boss will just own you. So, and then you can swap between the new arrangement of the soundtrack and the originals. So the console version seems to be far and away the better version than what we had previously.
An auto battle, which apparently is just like completely broken. The auto battle just like is like the AI is awful, like truly awful. So like if a character is like designated as like their archetype is healing, they'll just use heal every turn, even if everybody is at full HP. So it's just like it just doesn't work.
Just blowing mana.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so for the whole package, if you want to buy it on the eShop, it costs $107.95, which is a fair chunk of money. I feel like if they could have just like made it like a standard full price game, right? Like the usual $90, but they needed to have that extra $18, I guess.
Well, they need to pay that person who made the new font. That's why.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is that like the font was truly awful on the mobile and PC versions, and they made a font that is actually readable for the Switch version, which is nice. The old one is still on by default. Like you have to go into the menu and then change it to the new one, which is like they know that everybody hates it. They know that the new font is a better option, but they decided to do it.
I love that this game is just absolute Malibu Stacy vibes, though. Like it's literally just got a new hat. Everyone's just going nuts for it. So good. It's got a new font.
But I mean, yeah, it's I don't know. I feel like they could have just like sold the originals as well, but then like I don't know if anybody has ever actually tried to play Final Fantasy 1 or 2. They are not playable. They're just truly terrible games.
Well, the thing that's really great about this version, as far as I know, is that 6 is like an official like what am I trying to say? It's hard for some people to go and play 6 these days because there are so many different versions to choose from with none
Yep.
of them really being like the really the most favored version. Like I guess the one that was the Game Boy Advance version, right? Because
Yep.
that had like a new translation, and even that had like a clearer font and everything like that. But I'm pretty sure that this version is now like would be considered the best version of 6 to get into.
Yeah, so like there were like weird issues with 6 because of like how Square Enix decided to approach localization back then. So like there were different translations, and like the PAL version like had a whole bunch of bugs fixed, but then like one huge bug that wasn't present in the NTSC version, and like the Game Boy version had like its own issues as well because there were like some weird bugs and balancing issues. So I mean, yeah, this is like far and away the best way to play Final Fantasy VI.
And you can buy each game individually as well, which is great.
You can,
Yes.
yeah. So the first 2 games are $18 each, and then the subsequent 4 games are $27 each. So like it would cost $150 if you wanted to buy them all separately. So like,
Or $400 if you want to buy it in one little box on eBay.
You can pre-order it on PlayAsia for 125, I think, from memory.
yeah, which is it's nice.
I just think
I
it
mean,
wouldn't surprise
PlayAsia
me.
kind of sucks.
The what do you call it? The Square Enix Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8 double pack that they released in Asia. It's only like one game on cartridge, the other was a download code.
Oh, so infuriating.
It wouldn't surprise me if the retail release was like 3 games on the cart and the rest is download.
Although they did actually subsequently release in Europe Final Fantasy 8 and 9 double pack that was all on the cart. So I don't know why they just did that for you. And I know that because I bought it at EB Games because somebody had traded it in. So I bought a pre-owned copy of the 8 and 9 double pack from Europe, and it has both games on the cart. So don't know why they did that, but
yeah, I guess it's also frustrating. It's also my biggest problem with the physical debacle is that like I still prefer to buy physical games because unless it's a game that I'm really looking forward to, I won't get it at launch. I'll get it later on down the track when it's all patched out, all the issues are done, and it's cheaper because it's on sale and things like that. But if it's a limited run version of the physical copy, then prices for that will go sky high because people are scalping them, and you'll never find it on sale ever again. And then you're just waiting for the very random sale on the eShop when it goes down by like 5% only or something like that. Like I won't be able to get this whole collection, for example, for a more tasteful like $70 or $80 or something. So that's annoying.
Square Enix is generally pretty good about discounts. So like every single Final Fantasy game goes on sale for about 50% off on the eShop every 3 months or so.
But that takes a couple of years for that to happen though after.
Yeah,
launch,
it's usually about a year after that they start discounting it, and then a couple of years when they start getting deep discounts. Yeah, I mean, just Nintendo is kind of to blame for like the lack of physical copies, because like cartridges are expensive for developers to do. But then like, just you're charging $110 for this, just like suck it up and make cartridges. Yeah, it's just Square. I mean, this is all coming from the company that sold like Tomb Raider so that they could buy NFTs. So. I mean, sound business decisions aren't exactly up there on Square Enix's strengths.
That is true.
Yeah, so before we move on to our feature discussion, Advance Wars is actually out now. Many people thought it wouldn't happen. But it's out. Nintendo can't take it back from you anymore. If you have a copy of it, it's yours forever.
I don't know. There could be lawyers going up to people's houses right now where they're trying to do cease and desists.
But
the old Wii commercials where the guys rock up with the Wiimote saying we would like to play.
We would like to take your
game back.
But yeah, so it's out now. You can play it. It's apparently pretty good. And the Vook's review, Daniel gave it a 4.5 out of 5, which it was always going to be a high score.
He's not biased to Advance Wars in any way, shape, or form.
But I mean, if you're an Advance Wars fan, and that's kind of what you want to know, right? Is that those super hardcore fans do think it's a good port. So, although apparently I saw in the Discord that there's weird performance stuff.
Yeah, he mentioned that to me as well. It dips occasionally.
I played through the tutorial as I was saying before, which is like 3 separate like missions, and it was fun. Like at least for that part. I understand. Like I think I linked the DF tech review in the Discord about it, and one of the things the guy says in there is that like as much as it has performance issues, like it didn't really impact the enjoyment of the game because it was most of the time it's sort of like unnoticeable. And I would agree. Like it's not really noticeable as far as I've seen, except I'm assuming the big ones which you mentioned are like the when the battles get quite a bit larger. But yeah, I guess we'll see.
I think the other thing you could argue too is that if you've played Wargroove and you liked that, this is the game that inspired Wargroove.
Mm-hmm.
It is, yeah. And from what I hear from like hardcore Advance Wars fans, like Wargroove doesn't really hit the same itch. It doesn't quite get there. So now you can play these.
One surprising thing is that it doesn't seem like they worked on the game at all after they finished it. Because as per the game's gold codes not working, gold coins not working, the games have been, the 1.0 has been finalized forever, and there's no patch out for the game. So they just sort of printed it and then didn't release it and then never worked on it ever again, which is just insane. Like,
that doesn't sound like Nintendo.
No, not at all.
Making a game and sitting on it for a few years and then not doing anything to it.
I'm just imagining now that they had them shipped out to all the headquarters, and like Nintendo of Australia will randomly 2 years from now pull a tarp off a box and find an entire stack of Advance Wars cartridges they forgot they got sent a year ago from now, you know.
Or like a year from now, someone will remember that they forgot to push the update button and then a firmware update or something comes out.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not like they haven't updated games with like new features and additions like 3 years after they came out. I mean, look at, Super Mario Party that got online features added like 3 years after it came out.
It'd be nice if they just patched out the performance stuff. Because, for the most part, it seems to be a reasonably... It's 30 FPS and has some, like, frame pacing issues. But then, like, some of the battles have unlocked FPS, which is such a weird choice. And it just fluctuates wildly from, like, 50 down to 30. Like, just all over the place. Which is just an odd decision. Just, like, cap it at 30. Like, it's such an odd thing to see, but... Yeah.
The important thing is that it's out and like people are buying it.
Yeah.
I was gonna buy it just the other day so like people could, get more games, but I don't think Nintendo's gonna do more games, so I don't think it really matters that much.
I was just thinking we'll give it 3-4 years and they'll announce the DS game being remade in that same art style, because why not?
Maybe. I think they have to announce a Japanese version of this game first because it still has not been announced for Japan yet.
Correct.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is what it is, right? Nintendo is always going to do weird things, right? And they had like a whole year to like fucking localize it and get it ready for Japan, and then they didn't.
Well, didn't they put Advance Wars 2 in Japan via like Club Nintendo at the time?
They did, yeah.
So maybe this is going to be like a coin reward thing for Nintendo of Japan. Are we able to spend their silver coins and get Advance Wars?
Maybe. Just to, have that fun little throwback. So yeah, moving on to our feature discussion. Let's talk about the Mario movie, because that came out and we all saw it, and it's pretty good.
Mean, to be fair, it came out 30 years ago. Oh, you're talking about the new Mario movie. I'm with you.
I think you mean the superior version came out 30 years ago.
So I just have to say this. I was watching the Corridor Crew channel this morning, and they talked about some of the visual effects in the old Mario movie. And they talked about how this was the very first movie ever to use computers to scan film to make it digital, to use the visual effect program Flame to do like particle effects, and to turn video into a new file format for like high quality video stuff. It's like the first movie to do all of this, and it's now sort of standard stuff in the industry. So just sort of interesting that even though the movie itself is pure garbage in terms of everything, it actually has some cool tech stuff behind it.
Mm-hmm. I hear that Siri has some opinions. What was she saying?
She just said that here's what she found. So,
but yeah. So what did everybody think of the Mario movie?
I genuinely loved it. I loved every minute of it. The entire time I was watching it, I just had a massive grin on my face. Like it was fun. There was a ton of little like throwbacks to previous games. All the musical motifs that came on like throughout the entire movie were amazing. Yeah, I don't like it's made for fans. Like it 100% is. It is 100% like a 1.5 hour marketing tool, but I do not give a shit in the slightest. Like I just enjoyed it, and that's it.
Yeah, I agree. And like everyone else, I'm just super happy that Jack Black is the breakout personality from the film with his song. I love that they gave him a song, the opportunity to perform a song of his own on it. It's the stupidest thing in the world, but it's so good. But I think the personality that stuck out the most to me was, in a positive way, was probably Seth Rogen. As Donkey Kong. Like, just every time I heard him, I'm like, yeah, okay, he sounds like Donkey Kong. Even his ridiculous stoner laugh is absolutely how I expect Donkey Kong to sound when he laughs.
I mean, like, what's amazing about that is, like, he's not putting on any voice or anything. Like, that's just Seth Rogen.
It's just Seth Rogen. Like, Seth Rogen is Seth Rogen.
Yeah, I just didn't realize how similar Seth Rogen was to Donkey Kong until he starts saying Donkey Kong things.
Yeah. Chris Pratt wasn't even as bad as a lot of us were expecting him. I think
it was fun.
Yeah, and that's it, right? I think like we all just expected him to not be great. That's for sure. And that came out as such. Like he wasn't anything, spectacular.
And they just immediately explained the voice, like in the first 5 seconds of the film. Straight away.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I thought the animation and art style was incredible. It was all handled very well. There was a lot of fan service, as Michael had pointed out, but like with a kids movie like this, about a video game in particular, such a huge franchise, like it couldn't have been anything else. To be successful like this, it literally could not have been anything else. We've seen what something else is, and it was absolute nightmare fuel. So.
I've heard some people hated this part. I don't know about you guys. The part where they're building their own carts, just before they play Mario Kart.
The selection stuff.
The selection thing. A lot of people hated that. They were like, oh, this is like too gamey. Like, I love the shit out of that. I thought that was great.
I just remember Sorry, just to quickly get before Luke. There was something I really didn't like about the film. And that was just the typical Illumination / DreamWorks thing that they do with their animated films, where they use a lot of like just pop culture / licensed songs in their films. Like when like Take On Me came on and stuff like that. It was like, this is so out of place.
Especially,
really hate
because
I would agree with that.
From the soundtrack that they had like scored pieces that were supposed to go in those places, and then they just swapped them out, I guess, at the last
there's
second.
Just so much other music they could have used. I do like that they had like, the Mario Kart music in there when the Kongs are building the Mario Karts themselves and stuff. But yeah, whenever they do that, man, I'm just like, oh, this is already dating itself. Like in 5 to 10 years time, like kids don't, some of them might
kids don't know Beastie Boys.
Yeah, that's it, right?
At least,
like,
one thing I'll say is at least all the music is like quite old. So like it isn't like they've used songs from like the past 2 years that is immediately gonna pin the film down. All the music was like 20, 30 years old. Maybe like more. What am I talking about?
Like a Pharrell Williams song or a Justin Timberlake song or something like that, like with the previous films.
I think it would have been hilarious if Lizzo was in the movie, because she was in Star Wars the same day they came out.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I think I said going into it that I was optimistic because the directors have done the Teen Titans stuff for a number of years now. Same with the writers, and they've nailed that same. Yes, if you look at it as a kid, you're going to see bright colors. It's going to be appealing, but if you look at it as an adult, there's going to be an undercurrent of things to it. And I knew going in I was going to enjoy it, but I just honestly when the film started, the credits started rolling, I was just like, that was a heck of a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I knew it would be good, but I didn't think it would be as good as it ended up being. So,
Now, I understand the criticism. Like, it isn't a literary masterpiece in the slightest.
Nah.
The story is basic. The script is so. Like it, but that's fine. Like, I just don't care. Like, there's sometimes that stuff isn't super important. And I think the movie as a whole is just so much fun, especially if you're a fan. I understand maybe if you're not a Mario fan, they can maybe like walk away from that being like, hey, that was okay, or that was even garbage. But if you're a Mario fan, I don't understand how you could possibly dislike that. I think that was just so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so I'm probably a little bit more down on it than you guys are.
Surprise.
There we go.
Look, I thought it was very enjoyable. I thought the licensed music was very dumb, but I also laughed very much when No Sleep Till Brooklyn started playing. So
that made me chuckle.
Yeah,
it was It was fun. I think holding out for a hero during the training montage was the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen, and I would replace
Like,
that music in an
Shrek
instant
already
if
did
I
it,
was
right?
allowed.
Like,
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like, it's fine. Like, it's just, I think the issue for me is that, like, there's no, like, real, like, I don't know. There's no journey throughout the film, right? It's just like, this is a collection of scenes. A thing happens, and then another thing happens, and then another thing happens, and none of them are really, like, all that connected to each other. They're just kind of a series of scenes. And, like, that's absolutely fine as a kid's movie. I'm not expecting it to be, like, you know...
just going on from that, like, a lot of it's just completely irrelevant anyways. Like, Peach is training up Mario to go on this thing, and then Toad comes along, he's like, can I come? And she's like, yeah, sure, why not? That's
Yeah.
me. All right. And then, like, they go off to get the Kong army, and then the Kong army just, like, essentially just gets blown up. And they're just like, okay, we don't need them. It's like, what's the point of all these scenes? Why are we doing all of this if none of it matters?
Yeah,
Anyway.
I mean, like, the reason they were doing that is so they could show off the cool, like, you know, video game
Mad
references,
Max,
and, like,
Rainbow
that's
Road.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, it was a lot of fun, and yeah, I mean, Chris Pratt wasn't as annoying as everyone thought he was going to be.
I just remembered one thing that I actually hated heaps. When that Cooper literally said blue shell to activate blue shell.
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to be like, oh, delete that part out of the movie, please.
I love the fact that Charles Martinet's big cameo was he was the father of Mario and Luigi.
Well, he was also Jumpman as well at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, he was Jumpman.
Yeah. So he was Jumpman, and he, did the Mario stuff and all that. But in context of story, he's the father of Mario and Luigi, and I think that's just like a very like a perfect position for him to land in. And I will say too, I knew Kevin Michael Richardson would do a great job as Kamek, and I'm very happy that he did.
Oh, it was so good.
Oh, I don't want to. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. I don't want to spoil anything. We'll talk about it after the show. There was a moment that Bowser and Kamek shared at one point that I was like, "What is happening right now?" So,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
totally.
For those who don't know who Kevin Michael Richardson is, his most prominent role is two. One is he's Cleveland Jr. on the Cleveland Show, and two is he played Shredder in the 2012 animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series. If you're a Lilo and Stitch fan, he's also Captain Gantu. So he's like this big, beefy voice guy, and then he plays like this really high-pitched, nasally, voice for Kamek. It's just perfect.
It's another perfect voice for a Nintendo character, though. When I heard that, I'm like, oh, this is what Kamek would sound like.
100% what Kamek sounds like, totally.
I do want to say though too, I did chuckle in the scene. We saw it at the Game Awards. When Mario walks past the antique shop. And there was a line of dialogue in the movie that wasn't in that trailer because it's an antique, and the little toad goes, "Oh, how will this work?" And he goes, "Oh, you just have to blow on it."
Oh no, that's in it. That was in the Game Awards one because I was talking about that on the Vookcast at the time.
I don't recall hearing it. Yeah, I just remember seeing all the iconography for the antiques. So
yeah, no, it was really good.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. Just speaking of the voice actors and characters, Charlie Day did an absolutely incredible job as Luigi. I think far and away, like, the standout of that film was Charlie Day's performance, and I wish they'd given him more to do.
That's the thing. For Luigi, I think they completely underutilized his character.
Yeah.
Apart from the final scene when he's with Mario and sort of helping set up the story, he was non-existent. And I get he was like the whole showing how bad Bowser can be, but it's like, if you don't know how bad Bowser can be and you're going to see a Mario movie, you probably need to do something else before you go see that movie.
I do appreciate that he was made the damsel in the film rather than Peach, which is what we're normally used to. So he sort of fits that. Maybe like in the second film, he'll sort of redeem himself, and we get like a Luigi's Mansion kind of thing, or
we better get a Luigi's Mansion thing because I want to hear that theme.
Yeah,
mind you, did the I don't know about if you guys did it, but when he's running away from the skeleton Koopas, I can't think of the exact name right now.
Drybones.
That's it. And he runs into the castle, and then the light goes out, and then all the eyes open up behind him, like that was legit like terrifying. I wasn't like scared, like, oh my god, this is horrible. But it's like the actual tension in that scene was so good. Like I wasn't expecting it.
Mentioning dry bones, we straight up watched a Koopa get killed and turned into a dry bones at one point.
We did,
100%. Yeah.
The kids, that guy's he's not going to get. His flesh is gone. He's dead.
I really like the Shy Guys as well. I think they were great.
They were great. Yeah, that's a good point. They were super creepy in their little debut moment. It was perfect. Yeah, I think this film was handled really, really well.
I did like the fact that they didn't throw in Bowser Jr. or the Koopalings or anything like that, but they did throw in a Koopaling reference on the piano.
Yeah, it was a
Ludwig
Ludwig
von
van Cooper. Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think all of it is quite good. I do honestly think that like Anya Taylor-Joy was kind of underutilized with the script. The script was kind of just like a little bit basic and boring for Peach.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
I will take in general, to be honest.
yeah. But
I
I will take a boring Peach over a kidnapped Peach like literally any day of the week. So hopefully in future films, because we're pretty much guaranteed to get future films. Hopefully in future films they do more with her and more with all of the characters really. Like Luigi needs his Luigi's Mansion moment. Peach needs something interesting happening.
I would say I did not expect a flashback, and I was very happy when I saw the character design in a flashback.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was that was really good as well. And the Easter egg. There was also an Easter egg at the end of the film. Well, sorry, a post-credit scene.
A literal Easter egg.
Yeah, literal Easter egg.
Which honestly, every time I saw that, I was just like, that's exactly like the shot from the end of the Roland Emmerich Godzilla movie.
Oh my god, I didn't even put that together.
It is.
That's
Yeah.
literally how that movie ends. Like their post-credits thing is the
Yeah.
camera just pans in on a Godzilla baby egg. So.
Oh, and now we've spoiled it. But,
let's put a spoiler warning before this segment.
Yeah, there was going back to earlier on in the film, it's interesting that they didn't incorporate Yoshi in the main film as well. I get that there's a lot of characters to go through. They already introduced a lot of characters here, but there was a really cool shot where they basically just lifted the shot of that Yoshi stampede from Super Smash Bros. Melee, and they just put it straight in the film. So they're like some really cool, like just GameCube era Easter eggs. There's obviously the opening chime of starting up your GameCube, which was Luigi's ringtone, which was perfect.
It was so good.
They're just really good, really well handled. I'm glad that this wasn't a film that like Nintendo made in house. You know, like how Final Fantasy tend to try to make their feature films in house and stuff. I'm glad that Nintendo didn't do that because I feel like they would have ran away a bit too hard with it, and they handed it to a company that does deal with children's animated features and even touches some big properties as well, and they really handled this one well. There was some moments that stood out like sore thumbs, like the music and things, but ultimately, I think we're all in agreement that it was a really good, fun film.
Yeah. I just hope with future ones, because like another thing that was like a little bit frustrating for me is that they seem to have drawn almost entirely from 3D games. So like the N64, Donkey Kong 64, even for like all of the Donkey Kong stuff. Even with like
DK rap in there.
Yeah,
I love it. When the DK rap came on, I was like, perfect film, 10 out of 10.
But then like all of the power-ups were like pretty much like stuff that appeared in the 3D games, and like like it's fine. But like there's a lot of like really interesting 2D stuff that I think could be incorporated into the films as well.
Well, it's clear that in the second movie, Mario and Luigi will be cursed and thrown into a 2D world at some point.
That's
probably
the animated series.
Yeah.
It was never made clear though why there was a warp pipe in the middle of or underneath Brooklyn that led straight to the Mushroom Kingdom.
No,
that kind of didn't make any sense. And no one else.
I mean, like
this thing.
I don't know. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief for that. Right? It's it's just weird things happen sometimes. Okay.
That was the premise of the original Super Mario Brothers movie as well. Was that there was a giant meteorite underneath New York or whatever that they just stumbled across.
Pretty sure that's the same thing for the TV show as well. There's just and that's not even a giant green one. It was just a regular sewer entrance from memory.
Yeah,
just transported them into the Mushroom Kingdom. So,
yeah. Oh, another unsung character though was the dog, in the apartment that the Mario Brothers are trying to repair the plumbing of.
Oh, I totally agree. That was amazing.
There's a great payoff moment. Well, let's not spoil it here, but it was a great payoff moment that includes that dog at the end. That actually made me laugh really hard.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, quite a good film. And hopefully it gets developed in future movies. So interesting. It's also breaking just like tons of records. It's like I think the highest.
I checked earlier. It's like $780 million US so far, and it's yet to open in Japan.
Yeah, of
Which,
course.
Makes it basically like the best performing animated film and like the best performing video game film, which is not surprising.
And such a huge score discrepancy in Rotten Tomatoes as well. It's like 59 to like 96 or something, like critic and viewer consensus.
And that's interesting, right? Like a lot of audience people. Sorry, what am I trying to say? A lot of people who aren't critics will look at the score like that and they'll think, oh, critics, they don't know what we're talking about, blah, blah, blah. But people have to just keep in mind that critics are looking for something completely different when it comes to reviewing films.
Mm-hmm,
like, audience can totally watch and accept a film or digest a film however way they want. But a lot of critics will look at it with a very critical eye and they'll compare it to other films that are coming out. And there are kids' films that do score way higher than this, but that's obviously because they're doing something different. They have a particular message or something. They further they do something in the medium that's different and interesting. This movie is not doing anything different or interesting in terms of animated features. It's different or interesting in terms of video game films, but that's about it. So they're comparing it on different metrics. I think people just need to realize that.
Yeah. And also, like, just like in general with reviews, whether it's a film review or a game review, it's just somebody's personal opinion, right? Like, that's the whole point of reviewing is to criticize it, give your own opinion. If you disagree, like, okay, you disagree. Like, that you don't need to go and harass people, because I've seen a lot of people getting harassed for writing critical reviews of this movie, and it's like, just don't. I mean,
I was very critical of the Mandalorian season final, and I know tons of people that absolutely loved it. It's like, okay,
I've been entirely critical of this season of the Mandalorian in general, man.
I've been
had some real highs and some real lows this season.
Welcome to the Jedi cast. No, I mean, like, Mando's like, they sure did make a television show.
Look, just watch Andor, everyone. If you haven't seen Andor for some reason, just watch Andor. It's the best piece of Star Trek Star Trek? Star Wars. I'm gonna get so cancelled. Oh my god, please don't cancel me, everyone.
Fire here.
So you really want to bring the stars in together. Disney for years at one of the parks had a water show, and they built a Stargate thing, and it was a water screen that they projected onto it. And everyone just called it the Stargate. So Disney had Stargate for so long. I just thought that was funny.
Anyway, it's the best piece of Star Wars in a long, long, long time.
Well, Daniel, who's been on this show a few times, he watched between episode 7 and episode 8 of The Mandalorian, so between the penultimate and the final episode, he watched all of Andor, and he hated the fact that he did that, because now, after watching Andor and then watching the final of Mandalorian, he's like so let down on it.
Well, dude, my partner and I we literally just finished the last episode of Rebels last night, and man, that show goes hard. It's so good.
Rebels is so good, yeah.
It's such a great show. I didn't expect it to really get in. I know it's called Rebels, but I didn't literally think it would actually talk like or discuss like the start of the Rebel Alliance and go so hard into that, like with the last season in particular. But yeah, man, it's so good.
And it brings in Thrawn. I'm excited to see him in live action.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that they brought him back from the literal grave in terms of like Star Wars expanded media.
Yeah, he was considered a Legends character until they put him into Rebels. So.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's been the Jedi cast.
Back to Mario. That's one more point I wanted to make about the Mario film. Going back to what you were saying, Ollie, about it not coming out in Japan yet. Like, I'm really keen to get my hands on the 4K Blu-ray of this film and just watch it in as many different languages as possible. I can't wait to watch like the Japanese language. So I hope it's going to be on there.
I doubt it. They're getting worse and worse now with releases having like multiple languages on it. Back when like DVD was strong, there was like you'd buy a movie and it will have like 10 different languages on it.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. Now it's just like maybe like a basic few, like English, French, maybe Spanish on there, like all that type of stuff. But they don't have a ton of tracks on there anymore.
Yeah, just on that, I work with a whole bunch of people across Europe, and one of the people that I work with is Italian. He went to see the movie just before I did, and one of the things that he said is that like it's a very, very weird disconnect because all of the characters are animated for the English
speak with
voice
really
actors.
Thick American accents.
Well, no, because
of Italian ones.
They're basically like Bowser is Jack Black, right? They've animated it for him, so like having any other voice in there is apparently like super weird and uncanny. And the same is true of like all of the other characters as well.
You say that, and I'm going to bring it back to Star Wars. The episode, the Rogue
Star
Squadron.
Trek, you mean?
Rogue Squadron. That's it. In Rogue One, the final scene with Vader, when the corridor where he, lights the lightsaber up and just like decimates everyone. The actor they initially cast to play Vader was an Italian guy because he had the build, and Dave Filoni was the one who actually recorded, he directed that scene, that final scene, and he had another actor come in to play Vader. Because when he wasn't swinging the lightsaber, his other hand was doing Italian gestures the whole time. I'm just using this, the only one I know. But he was doing Italian gestures all the time. And it wasn't, he didn't say anything, but you knew he was Italian because of his hands.
Weird bit of trivia.
But it's the same thing. Like, because the actor was one thing, it didn't work out of, in the context it didn't work. It's the same thing with Jack Black. I remember he went on a world tour for Kung Fu Panda. And he went to like Korea and all this stuff. And it's like, he doesn't voice the character in Korean. So why is he there? But it's because it's based on him. It's based on his performance.
Well, they probably had the English audio and subtitles or something like that in the film. Oh, maybe not.
No, they had a full dub. They just,
weird.
had him there because, he was Kung Fu Panda.
Well,
also,
what I'm getting at is I'd love to hear the song Peaches in a thick German accent. That's what I'm getting at.
I mean, that would be great.
So good.
Another thing, just before we move on, Mario said "Mamma Mia" way too many times. Once was fine. 3 times was too many.
Well, even Papa Mario said it as well, right?
Yeah.
He said it towards the end as well.
I want to call out the "It's a Me Mario" when that was done in the Donkey Kong fight. It sort of made me chuckle because it was done like in the perfect place.
Yeah.
And I will point out too the I forgot now what I was going to say. It was something that Angelo said, it reminded me, and now I've forgotten, so ignore me.
The Papa Mario?
No, before Ollie started talking, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll remember it like an hour from now.
Watch Andor, I guess.
Yes.
That classic Star Trek series. Alright, let's talk about the games that we're playing. We might skip 20 questions because we literally have not discussed it, who's doing it. Yeah, we'll skip over that. But yeah, so we'll talk about the games that we're playing. Angelo, you're the only other person who's written anything in the document about what they're playing, so tell us what you've been playing.
I won't go into it too much. I'm just playing Resident Evil 4 Remake at the moment. Really, really enjoying that so far. There's some people, well, as I've said on the podcast before, we're playing through the whole Resident Evil series at the moment. We still haven't gotten to 8 yet. And by series, I mean just the numbered series. We're not doing any of the spin-offs as yet. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Resident Evil 4. I reviewed it years and years ago when the HD version came out on the 360, and I really didn't like it at the time. And then we played it again just before Christmas, and I kind of enjoyed it a little bit more, like maybe 5% more. But just the game, the design of the game was just a little bit janky. It was very of its time. But Remake is super good, super fun. They've really improved on some of the structure of the game as well. They've changed some aspects out and replaced them with whole new, more modern aspects in terms of just gameplay and level design and even character. I appreciate that the young teenage girl in this game is not running around in a damn skirt this time. But yeah, it's really good. Really, really enjoying it. It's nowhere near as scary as. This is a little bit of a deviation. I saw the strapline of an article the other day. I think it was on Super Jump or something, and someone was had written about RE4 Remake, and the strapline was people consider RE4 to be the pinnacle of survival horror or something, and I just did an absolute record scratch. I'm like, what are you talking about? This game isn't survival horror at all. It's barely even horror. There are some monsters in it, but it's not a particularly scary game, and there aren't really many survival
action
elements
horror
either.
for sure. But
sure,
not survival horror.
It's more like pop horror at this point, or B-tier horror. But I'd say that Resident Evil 7 is way more the pinnacle of horror in the series. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. It's really, really fun. If you're worried about it being a scary game, don't be worried at all. It's very silly.
I did think of a game that I played last week or week before that I can talk about a little bit, and that was Tron Identity.
Oh yeah,
so the visual novel game, visual games. Honestly, the story was fantastic. It is definitely visual novel And the only rule, you can sort of occasionally, a cursor will pop up and you can move it around to investigate the scene and learn about, the building or the walls or the trees, because there are trees in this grid. And then the only real sort of gameplay is the defrag minigame, when you have to defrag someone's identity disk to unlock memories you can learn more about, during your investigation. And those, it's kind of weird. It's like you have to match either the numbers or the shapes underneath the numbers, and you can only match them if they're next door or two spaces over. And there's a whole bunch of other things that make it challenging. But you can also just completely skip over them if you don't want to play them. So it's 100% a visual novel if you don't do those elements. The thing that sort of caught me off guard is I knew it going in, but it's not set on the grid that the movies and all that are based on. So the original movie, the sequel TV series, and some of the games are all based on that one grid. This is like
wait, there's a TV series?
Yeah, Tron. Oh God.
Is it animated or live action?
No, it's animated. Elijah Wood's in it, and a few other big names as well.
I had not heard of this.
Okay. That's where they introduced the green characters.
Tron Uprising.
That's it.
Okay.
It's all about sort of the battles and stuff. But yeah, so if you're a Tron fan, there's enough that connects it back to it. But if you're not someone who knows Tron, you don't need to know anything to enjoy the storyline. That being said, it is extremely short. It only took me about 3 and a bit hours to get through it. So it's not a long game at all. But because of choices, like characters can die if you make the wrong choice, or if they don't trust you, they won't listen to you when you tell them to, don't do something stupid. There is obviously replay value, but the main story arc is still there. Doesn't change, so replay may be a little undiminished for that. But yeah, I thought it was good. Good game.
Nice. And it's also like technically canon as well, isn't it?
It is considered canon, but because it's on a separate grid, a separate server from the one we know, they also can now do their own thing, which is why this one has trees. They've got digital trees, which act as like their repository of information, whereas the main grid server doesn't have trees because it's a completely digital thing. So,
well, if you want to play a significantly worse game, very much recommend checking out Dead Island 2 because it sucks. It's fine. It just, you spend like the first half of the game and like the entirety of the combat is just like looking at a zombie's head and mashing the attack button. Like there's no more depth to that. And then in the second half of the game you unlock guns and it's like, well, this is just significantly better than anything I played in the first half. Like the guns really make the entire rest of the systems seem interesting. So I don't know why they like kept it. Like, I
haven't played the first game in a long time, like pretty much since it was released. But I think the first game was also like that. You started off with melee weapons, and then you unlock guns. I also found that supremely frustrating in the first game.
Yeah, but in this one, it's just like, I don't know. There's other like really frustrating parts, like how they have like these characters that all play completely different. There's 6 different characters to pick as. To play as, but you have to pick like right at the beginning. You don't get to like try them out first, and you can't change throughout like the entirety of the story. So it's like, how do you know which one you want to play as? You don't really.
That's kind of my problem with a lot of RPGs with class-based systems, that you pick one at the beginning and you have no idea how they work.
Yeah, and then like there's like weird things how like the dialogue, like NPC dialogue, was written so that like the player character dialogue can just like slot in, so they haven't like done different dialogue or characters react differently to different characters or whatever. So like it's just kind of a character having a conversation with themselves and then your character just like saying silly things in between it. So the story is very, very disjointed. And then in the second half of the game, the story just like dives off a cliff, and then like it's like every single story beat following you picking up guns. Basically, it's just like, oh, here's a twist, but it's like, oh, this person turned out to be evil, and then they do that like 6 more times. Where it's like, oh, we're going to go to this helpful person, and then you go there, and it's like, oh, that person's been turned into a zombie, and like again, it happens 6 times in a row, and it's like, okay, it was kind of interesting the first time, but now you keep doing this, and it's just not cool.
I mean, I played that in preview, and I was okay with it. Like, I played the first one, it was like, yeah, it's just more of that, right? Yeah. But I knew it wasn't going to be a good game when they called it Dead Island, and they said it on the fucking United States. It's not an island.
Okay, so they actually have a reason for this in the game, right? It's like because LA is like infected with zombies, it's now, you know, a metaphorical island because it's walled off and you can't get out.
I mean,
and it's like
can,
actually, yeah, I
but-
mean you can because that's the whole point of it.
Was China
Anyway.
is China a metaphorical island because it has the Great Wall surrounding it?
Yeah,
Makes no sense.
it's very dumb. Anyway, I've also been playing Shadows Over Loathing, which was announced and then shadow dropped during the Indie World presentation. It's a sequel to West of Loathing. It's very, very silly, but it's a lot of fun. I think it improves on West of Loathing a lot. I am a cheese wizard, which basically is just like summoning different types of cheese and then either eating those cheeses or throwing them at enemies. And like you would expect, right? Like there's one ability that you get early on as like a cheese wizard where it's like, oh, you know, summons this stinky cheese to like, you know, do damage to enemies, and you think, okay, well, it's going to summon the cheese and then they're going to smell it and get damage. But like you literally just like get a piece of cheese and then they just like lob it at their head, and that's why they take damage. So like it's very, very stupid, but it's stupid in the best kind of way. But yeah, I also have been playing through Crisis Core Reunion because I didn't have the time to do that in December when it released. It's a good game.
Still got mine in its shrink wrapping back there. I haven't opened it yet.
I managed to get like a brand new copy from EB for like $40, so I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
Nice. Yeah, I paid $60 or $70 for mine. Like I said, it's still back there behind me. I haven't opened it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's like I have like these weird like, because I played it a lot when I was younger, when I was like a teenager. I played the PSP version, and like I don't really remember the story all that much. But then it's like I have weird muscle memory for like, oh, this is the squats mini game where you spend like 45 minutes just doing squats, and I can do that perfectly. But like I don't remember like, oh, what's gonna happen to Genesis? Who knows?
I just remember that the cutscenes in that game looked sick. It looked so good on the PSP.
And now basically like they've just like taken the models that were in the cutscenes and then like slapped them in the main game, so it looks fine most of the time. Yeah, quite good. Anyway, Michael hasn't played any games.
I haven't really. I don't know if I mentioned it. The only thing I have been playing, quote unquote, I did end up getting a playdate, which is not focusing on here. So I've been playing a few games on that.
Is that in the cover?
Yeah, it's in the cover. Sorry. There we go. If that's focusing,
Nice.
I think it is.
Nice.
Which is pretty neat. But they're all like small little fun games you play like on the train and if I'm on a break at work or whatever. Nothing like hardcore.
Yeah, you don't buy games for that though, do you?
There is. They just released the catalog for it. Oh, that's their store. They call it the catalog, which is like a curated collection of games that you can purchase through there, or you can sideload games that release on like itch.io or whatever.
But how did it work before then? Wasn't it like, you know, every month or something like that you get a new game installed?
So they have like a season pass. So it doesn't matter when you get your play date. You as soon as it gets activated, it starts off the season. So like every week on Monday, you would get 2 games dropped for 12 weeks, I think, from memory.
Okay.
Yeah. What's it like actually in terms of like the hardware? Like, does it feel nice to play? Because like that
feels super premium. Like it's very, very well designed. It's super cool. All the buttons are hella clicky. The crank feels super nice. Has a lot of like little feedback. There's no like rumble or anything, but it has a lot of like audio feedback. Like when you undock the crank, it makes like a little sound, and it makes a sound as you crank it. Like they've designed it super well.
Nice, yeah. Because you can still order those, can't you?
You sure can.
Still buy one.
I hope
it'll be like
waiting a year and a half.
Yeah.
It just recently went up in price as well, which just is.
I saw that.
The sign of the times. It's not super expensive. It's only it was $179, I think, US. Now it's $199.
Yeah, so like 300-ish Australian, which like is a fair price for something that's like small and niche like that. I'm in
their Discord, and someone just asked this morning, "Oh, does anyone know if the Playdate is sold at a loss?" And they have it's a community Discord, but a lot of the Panic guys are in there. And one of the guys replied with like, "Hey, no, we don't sell it at a loss." So, which is totally fair because it's such a niche product, and like they only just started selling like games on the console. So like there will be no way to make money back for the past like 2 years since it's been out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I think they announced recently that they'd hit like a pretty big sales milestone.
Yeah,
so-
50,000 consoles, which I think is like so much more than they ever expected to sell this thing.
Yeah, I mean, like when they did like it wasn't a Kickstarter, it was like something like that, right? It was.
I think it was just
Something
pre-order,
very-
like a straight up pre-order on the website. You just ordered it.
I think I remember like back then they were saying like, oh yeah, we sort of expect to sell like 1,000, maybe 2,000, and like now they're at like 50,000. And
I think
I don't
on
know.
the day that they launched, they sold like 10,000 immediately. I think they've still only shipped like 25, so half of those units that have been ordered. But yeah, hopefully they can get their production woes like done. I don't know if there's just. I don't think there's really much component shortages anymore. Maybe specific components on that thing, or if it's just they're just not big enough to get like production time because they're just such low volume, quote unquote, compared to like everyone else. But
Michael,
yeah,
you have to let me know if anyone does like a port or a reimagining of something like Donkey Kong 94 on that thing, because I'd imagine
So-
playing it on that would be
I
incredible.
haven't installed it, but there is a Game Boy emulator for it.
Okay.
But I think it hasn't really been worked on for like almost a year now, and I think it's slightly jank.
Okay.
But I think like realistically, that hardware must be more powerful enough to emulate Game Boy.
I'd just be curious to
Um,
see how like a game like that would work with like the crank and some other like nifty little gameplay features.
Yeah, I guess you would have to do like a proper conversion / like remake. There's like a
I
little
just mean like even like a reimagining, like something completely different, but sort of in that same vein would be awesome.
there's a little like a Tempest style game, which you use the crank to like rotate around like the
Yeah.
field, which is really cool.
That's cool.
I know that somebody also ported the Pico 8 version of Celeste over to it.
Oh
Which-
really? Oh
Yeah.
damn, I'm gonna look that up.
I
Celeste
saw it
play
on Twitter a couple days ago, and that was like what really got me interested, because like the Pico 8 version of Celeste is like quite nice, and I would like to play it on a cute
Cool.
little handheld
Alright,
like that.
well, definitely start loading that. That's awesome.
But yeah, I know a bunch of game developers who have said that they're working on something just like as a palette cleanser kind of thing.
Mhm. I still haven't got through all the season games yet. Like they're so like weird and unique. Some of them are hella simple. Some of them just like literally like a matching game or whatever. And some of them are like full on like little like RPGs and stuff, which is cool.
So when you say that you subscribe for a season, is that right? Like, do you keep the games after that, or are they gone once?
Yeah. So like when you purchase it, it comes with like a season of games, which is 24 games that they've curated. Which like I said, drop every 2 weeks. Or if you want, you can just be like skip to the end. You can just have all the games available to you if you want to.
Okay.
One of the first ones
is
is
forever, like they're yours.
Yes, they're your games. Yeah, they're like that's part of the cost of the system. I'm assuming they will also do like another season at some point, which you just buy into, I assume. And they'll do like the same thing, a drop every couple of weeks.
And can you
it's
buy
a
like
game
a
at this-
previous season?
Sorry.
Can you buy like a previous season, like if the ones that you have missed at this point?
Well, no, there's only one season available. So they've
Okay,
done the
alright.
one season of games, and then they've just, like I said, just launched the catalog, which
Right,
is
okay.
a curated collection of games that they're doing, which I think is updated once now. So they had the initial batch of games on there, and then they've updated it one more time with more games. But yeah, we'll see. There's a cool game in there called Casual Birder, which is sort of like an RPG, and you need to take photos of birds, and you use the crank to do the focus of the camera, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. Anyway, buy a Playdate, I guess.
Yeah, by Playdate, play the games that I'm talking about in 2025.
Well, yeah, so we're going to skip the 20 questions because we're already like way over time, and I don't know who's supposed to be doing it anyway, so otherwise that about wraps up this week's Vookcast. So be sure to visit the site www.vooks.net for all your Nintendo news, reviews, and everything in between. To keep up to date, follow the site on Twitter, if it's still alive at the time this episode goes up, which is at vooks.net, all spelled out, or jump on over to our Discord at bit.ly/vooksdiscord. You can find all the hosts' social information and links for the stories covered in this episode in the episode notes on whatever platform you're listening to. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next fortnight.